Yo, what's good YouTube? Guy Kicks here. So in today's video, I'm going to be reviewing / comparing all the 990 models from the V1 to the V6, but primarily comparing each one of the older models to the latest V6. I've gotten a lot of questions on how the V6 compares to some of the older 990s, so I figured, you know what, let me just make a video and that way we can cover all of those main questions. My goal for this video is for someone who's never bought a pair of 990 before, can look at all these models, be able to compare, and then make the decision in order to be able to buy their first pair of 990s. I'm not going to go too deep into the details on each one of these models. I've done standalone videos and I'll leave links in the description below so you guys can check those out. But I'm basically going to cover the basic stuff here, how the shoes look compared to the V6, for example, how the shoes fit, how's the sizing, how's the comfort, and then finally, how the shoes look on feet compared to the latest model, the 990 V6. So with that being said, guys, sit down, relax, let's get into this review and let's talk about these. All right, so starting off here with the 990 V1, the OG, the Godfather. This is the one that started it all. These officially released back in 1982, so it's definitely been a while, and these were the first running sneakers to retail for $100. As you can see here, the V1 compared to the V6, they obviously have similar materials, and that's pretty much the same thing across the board. It's going to be a lot of suede and a lot of mesh materials. One of the most obvious things about the V1 is that out of all the models, the V1 is the one that looks the most retro, so if you're into sneakers that look very retro-like, then the V1 is probably the best one for you. Unlike the V6 that has a lot of reflective materials, especially on the end logos, here the V1 only has reflective material all the way to the heel part of the shoe. In terms of the cushioning system with the V1, there's nothing here that's going to wow you. It's pretty much an EVA foam. These do have end cap, however, there's no branding on these, but it does have that, and they definitely feel on the firmer side compared to all the other 990s. The V6 is definitely on the softer side compared to the V1. In terms of sizing with the V1, similar to the V6, I went with a 9.5. I'm a regular size 10, and with the V1, I went with the 9.5, and they definitely fit perfect. So here's a quick look at how the V1 and V6 look on feet. All right, so getting into the 990 V2, these released in 1998, so there's definitely a huge gap between the V1 and the V2. One of the main things you're gonna notice between the V2 and the V6 is that the V2 does not have as much mesh as the 990 V6. However, the V6 also has a more sophisticated look, looks more of a lifestyle or casual sneaker compared to the V6 that does have more of that performance look, that sleeker look that New Balance was going for. Here on the 990 V2 is the first time New Balance put reflective materials on the end logos on a 990 model. There's also a bigger leap in design in terms of the V1 and the V2 because obviously both sneakers look very different. When it comes to the cushioning system on the V2, these do feature Absorb, which is the first time that that's introduced on a 990 model. Unlike the 990 V6, that it does features end cap and that fuel cell technology. The way that cushioning system feels on the V2 is definitely more on that firmer side, very similar to the 990 V1, unlike the V6 that is more on the softer side. When it comes to sizing with the V2 compared to the V6, here's where things get a little bit tricky because when I first started buying V2s, I was going with my regular size 10, primarily because to me the toe box looked a little bit narrow, so I didn't want my toes to feel too tight. However, ever since Teddy Santis took over as the creative director of the Made in USA line, I feel like the 990 V2s do run a little bit bigger, so now I go with that 9.5, similar to the 990 V6. And here's a quick look how the V2 looks on feet compared to the V6. So up next is the 990 V3, which is arguably the best 990 ever made. For those who believe that, I really can't argue with you guys because I think I agree with you. I've been buying a lot of V3s in the past few months, and let me tell you guys, the V3 just looks so good. They did such an amazing job that is timeless. Comparing the V3 to the V6, there's a lot of similarities here, obviously, but one of the main areas where they're very similar is the amount of mesh that they have. Still, the V6 seems to have more mesh, especially around the toe box because the toe box just looks a little bit longer. But one of the biggest upgrades from the V2 to the V3 was the additional mesh that they added on this model. Another similarity between the V3 and the V6 is that they both have end cap. Based on the definition, and trust me, I am no expert in this, I've never seen end cap, I've never like ripped apart a midsole from a 990 before, but from what I've read, it's basically a polyurethane rim with a core of EVA in the center. The 990 V3 also features Absorb on the midsole, which is basically the foam material that they use, unlike the 990 V6 that features fuel cell. Another feature of the V3 that the V6 don't have is that the V3s do have a carbon fiber plate on the outsole. In terms of sizing between the two, I went with a half a size down for my regular size. I'm a regular size 10. With these, the V6 and the V3, I went with a 9.5. So let me show you guys how the V3s and the V6 look on feet. So up next is the 990 V4, originally released in 2016. Here's the first time the New Balance puts the American flag on a 990, and they placed it here on the front of the tongue, unlike the V6 that does not have one altogether. Obviously here you have similar materials, suede and mesh, like I've said already, similar reflective materials on the end logos and also on the heel. This is a very comfortable shoe altogether, really well rounded, similar to the V3. The cushioning system compared to the V3 feel very similar, and also very similar to the V6 in general. But I do have to say that the V4 is growing on me as one of the most comfortable 990s. I used to say that the 990 V5 was my most comfortable 990 that I own, but I gotta say, guys, I think I prefer the V4 over the V5. Switching to the outsole on the V4, New Balance got rid of that carbon fiber plate that you'll find on the V3. Here they replace it with this black piano black material that definitely gives the shoe a more sophisticated look overall. In terms of sizing with the V4, I went with the same size as the V6. I went a half a size down from my regular size. All right, so here's a quick look on how the V4 and V6 look on feet. And finally, guys, here we have the 990 V5. This model definitely has a special place in my heart because this is the first 990 that I ever bought. But I also blame it because of this model. I've been blowing away my pockets spending money on New Balance sneakers, but that's not your problem, that's my problem. But let me tell you guys, the 990 V5 is a well-rounded sneaker, definitely very comfortable, and you really can't go wrong going with the V5 over the V6. You know, when the V5 released in 2019, for those that already own a pair of V4s, it was probably pretty hard to justify buying another sneaker that looks so similar. However, when you compare the V5 to the V6, the V5 definitely has a more mature look, looks more of a lifestyle sneaker in general in my opinion, compared to the V6 because of its design and lines that it has going, and the V6 definitely looks more athletic compared to the V5. The V5 did maintain the American flag on the front of the tongue, and the V5s also brought in Ortholite insoles. One key change that New Balance decided to get rid of is this plastic TPU material that the V5s have around the ankle collar. I know a lot of people weren't a fan of that, and that material actually yellows over time, which I really don't have a problem with that, but if you do, maybe that's something to reconsider. When it comes to the comfort and fit on the V5s, still very comfortable. You do have end cap and absorb on this midsole, so it's still very solid and comfortable. But one thing that I've definitely noticed on the V5, and I probably didn't notice when I first got these, is that even though I went with the same size as the V6, they're both 9.5s, I have been noticing that on the V5, like my toe kind of touches the mudguard a little bit, and it's not that the shoe fits small. They don't fit small at all, but as I'm walking, my big toe sort of touches like that mud guard there, and it kind of bothers my nail a little bit, where the V6 got rid of that problem because the V6 has a longer toe box. And it's very weird because the V5 and V4 look almost identical, especially the toe box area, but I don't experience that on the V4. So that's the reason why now I'm picking the V4 over the V5 in terms of overall comfort. And here's a quick look how the V5 looks on feet compared to the V6. So I know I'm gonna get asked this question a lot, so I might as well just get it out the way and tell you guys which was my favorite 990 and which was my least favorite. I used to think it was the V5, but I was new to the game. I didn't know a whole lot, but after having all the models and wearing them multiple times and in different situations, I do have to say, and I agree with most people, that the 990 V3 is definitely the best 990 ever made. Not only because of how the shoe looks, but the comfort here is really good. And there's so many great collaborations with the V3, so many dope GR colorways. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I do have to pick the 990 V3 as my favorite 990. My second favorite 990, it depends on the question. If you're asking me which was my second favorite in terms of comfort, then I have to go with the 990 V4. But if you're asking me which one I like in terms of how the shoe looks, I have to go with the V2. And I just think that the V2 looks more mature, looks very clean. You can really wear the V2 for pretty much any type of occasion, where the V4 looks more like, you know, you're gonna go to the gym or more casual wear, things like that. The V2 definitely has a more mature look, so I would go with the V2. And the next runner up will definitely be the V4. I hope New Balance starts pumping out more colorways in the V4 and we can see more collaboration. One of my favorite collaborations this year is the 990 V4 Kith in the United Arrows and Sons colorway. One of my favorite sneakers that I have in my collection, and it is on a V4, so I hope we can see more colorways on this model. The next one up is the 990 V5. I can't believe this sneaker has dropped so much in my sort of standings of the 990s, but having all the models and wearing them in different situations, I gotta bump down the 990 V5s primarily because of that feeling I've been getting on my big toe. It doesn't bother me a lot, it's not uncomfortable, but it is something that I notice when I put these on after taking off one of these other 990 models. So I don't know what it is. Maybe I need to go half size bigger, but I doubt it because the shoe does not fit tight or it doesn't feel small, so it's kind of weird. And trust me, it's not because my toenail is super long. I recently cut them and I put these on and I still feel the same thing. Let me know in the comments below if you guys experienced that same issue. Next one up is the V6. There's definitely things that I like about the V6, but there's also some things I don't like. The overall look to me looks too athletic, looks too much of a gym sneaker, at least right now in 2022. Maybe 5-6 years down the road, it looks a little bit different. But for now, the V6 will definitely sit on the bench, especially if I'm gonna go out to a dinner, you know, wear something casual and I wanna throw on some sneakers. The V6 is definitely not gonna be the one because it looks too much of a performance shoe, and I'd rather go with some of the other 990s that have a more mature look overall. And finally, the V1 is my least favorite out of the pack here. And I'm not trying to bash the model because I really do like it. One of these had to be the last one, and unfortunately, it is the V1. I do like how the V1 looks in general. You do have a cool retro look here, but this midsole here is very simple, very basic, and the comfort is nothing out of this world. So because of that, primarily because of that, I have to put the V1 as my least favorite. All right, guys, so that's it for me. Hopefully this video brought you a decent comparison of all of the 990 models. Let me know in the comments below which one is your favorite 990. Is it the V3, maybe the V5? Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. And like always, guys, thank you so much for watching. To all the new subscribers, thank you. Welcome to the channel. If you're new, stopping by, and you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe. Hit the like button if you like the video. Helps the algorithm and all that good stuff. Helps the channel grow as well, so I will definitely appreciate that. I'll also leave a link to my Instagram page below where I normally post pictures of the sneakers that I have, things like that. And that's it, guys. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.